Hello and welcome to Tomlin's Harmonica Podcast, where I'll be hanging out with players and teachers and having conversations loosely based around harmonica. This week's guest is a winner of the National Harmonica League Player of the Year and has been described by Adam Gussow as a complete bluesician in every respect. He's an excellent band leader and teacher who I have the pleasure of working with on a regular basis. He's my harmonica brother from another mother, Liam Ward. Welcome to the show, Liam. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Lovely to be here.
So will you tell us a little bit about where you are currently? Because I know that a lot of our listeners will be over in the US and they might not have a good mental image of where you reside.
Okay, so I live in a town called Stroud, and it's part of an area in England called the Cotswolds, which is really quaint, and it's like little English villages. The sort of chocolate box kind of image of cottages with thatched roofs, all that kind of stuff, except that the town I live in, Stroud, is kind of like this alien that they want to get rid of because we're too artsy and radical and strange and quirky. So we're kind of the black sheep of the Cotswolds, really. So that I fit in there, and that's where I live.
I was going to say, that sounds like it's made for you as a location.
Yeah, I mean, we bought a house here, we're staying here, you know.
Fair. And what's it looking like currently? Is it pretty seriously quarantined, or?
I'm finding that, I don't know about you, but you go out for a walk and you get this mix of people who are really friendly, and it's almost brought them out of their shell, and they're just really kind of more talkative, I think, than they'd be normally. And then you get people who almost cross the street so they don't go near anyone else, and it's kind of like, whoa. So there's that divide. I imagine that's the same everywhere. I mean, what are you finding in Edinburgh?
I feel really bad. I'm the person who's crossing to the other side of the street.
You bastard!
Yeah, it's but to be fair, like, I think people are being less friendly than normal up here, but it's really crowded. So
yeah,
like, you've got someone walking on one side of the road, someone walking on the other side, and then I'm walking down the middle of the road with traffic screaming past me. So it's not an ideal situation, and I do feel a bit bad when I see a very friendly looking person coming towards me, and the first thing I do is just step out into traffic.
Especially because I walked all the way to Edinburgh just to see you.
I know. And I still insisted on doing this at a distance.
I know. Yeah. You know what's nice is it's brought out this strange kind of defiance in people that, you know what, I'm bloody well going to get my daily walk. And they're people who'd never normally leave the house. And then it's like, well, if I'm only allowed to leave the house once, I'm going to go on a walk, you know. And there's this. So even the people who aren't friendly, there's this kind of look on their face of cool, calm kind of defiance in the face of the authorities. It's a strange emotion it's bringing out.
Yeah, it's true, but it feels so British, doesn't it? It's kind of like, yeah. Well, they told us we could have one form of exercise, and by Jove, I'm going to have it.
I'm going to take my evening perambulation.
Totally. Oh, man. And you're kind of you've got a little bit more space than I do, haven't you? You've got some outdoor space you can make use of and get some natural light.
Yeah, we've got a little garden out the back, which gets a little bit of sun at the top end. If we kind of force ourselves up against the back wall, we can just about see the sun before it sets, which is nice. So I've been taking advantage of my time at home to build a wood and coal store for when the apocalypse comes. We're sorted for fuel for a few weeks at least, and we've got a pretty little wooden thing to store it in now because, you know, I'm stuck at home. So that's my new hobby.
See, I find that hilarious when I saw that posted on Facebook the other day, because I had a conversation with you a few days before. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna start practicing more. I've got all this extra time, and then you take up carpentry.
You know what? I don't know about you, but I mean, I usually get no time at all for editing my websites, and they're usually a bit messy. And I mean, yours are perfect, so I'm sure that well, actually, no, I'm not going to give you any credit because you've got minions doing it all for you. So I take all the credit back.
But you can give
usually
credit to them.
Yeah, they're brilliant. You're useless.
Oh.
You're just the man at the top taking the credit.
This is the first time that everyone's heard about this. They all thought that I was one of those people who had 40 hours in the day.
That's me. See, this is the point, right? So I usually don't get to do my website stuff, and they're all a bit messy. I never get around to it. But like today, for example, before we started this podcast, I've basically just been staring at my website editor. Kind of when I first get there, I go, "Oh, it looks okay. It looks all right." And then 6 hours later, I'm still like on the homepage going, "Well, this shade of blue, should I change it like 3%? If I make it slightly darker or lighter, will that make me sell more albums or more lessons or something?" And I've disappeared down this rabbit hole.
Oh man, I know that feeling. But while you're doing that, I'm listening to your album and stealing your licks. So you got to watch out.
Well, Adam Gussow is, I love that quote that you mentioned at the top of the show, and he's always got great quotes. And I remember reading his memoir about Satan and Adam. Is it Mr. Satan's Apprentice? I think it's called. And somewhere in that he just says steal everyone's shit, and that kind of stuck with me as an idea, not in life, but musically. Be a magpie, take the shiny stuff.
That's the thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking what you hear and appropriating it and building it into your repertoire. I think a lot of people, a lot of students especially, get really worried about starting to improvise because they think that improvisation is creating out of thin air something that has never been done before. And I mean, we tend to play with six notes on the instrument, so that there's only so much originality you can manage with that. And if you're a bit jazzier, then you've still only got 12 notes. So you have to take stuff you've heard and improve on it or put your own spin on it. It's a funny one when you're any kind of musician and you've got peers that you play with every so often, and you play with another harmonica player and you realize that they took something that you played last time, and so you feel that you have to take something from them. Like I remember at the Edinburgh Harmonica Workshop, I think it was the first one, but starting one of my solos with one of your licks, and you were really upset because you were going to start a similar solo like that.
I think I only have one lick, so the problem is it was gone by the time you'd used it.
That's not true. You have a monstrous repertoire of licks, especially on your album, which, was it last year you put that out or the year before?
It must be a couple of years now. I was planning a new one for this summer, and obviously the way the world is now, I'm not sure it's going to happen. But it's been a long time coming. Yeah, I think it must be 2 and a bit years now. So I've got a load of new songs. I'm not really playing stuff off that album anymore. I'm doing new songs, and I've been gigging them a while, and the new songs almost feel old now. I need to record them and get them out into the world,
So when you record, do you do it kind of at home, or do you go and rent a studio and do it the old-fashioned way? What's the process?
I only record at home for session stuff, and if they don't want me in the studio or can't pay for me in the studio. And so with my jug band, with the Jake Leg jug band, these days I tend to record at home. Because we tend to make the albums kind of bit by bit, and usually in small scale studios where it's actually easier for me to just kind of play from home, which is nice because more and more of the songs are on chromatic and I can't play the bloody thing. So I'm kind of at home, like desperately trying to work out the notes, patching together a kind of a solo or even just a simple melody. Like I can get a few notes, and then I mess it up. So then I stop, and the next few notes.
I know that feeling. I was recording something with Delacroix, and Harry, the guitarist in the band I play in, always likes to see how far he can push the harmonica player. And he's a very accomplished musician, and he plays an instrument that's very chromatic. And so he'll quite often say, "Wouldn't it be great if we played this line, like all of us, we played the same line together, and synchronize it?" And I remember trying to do this, and it involved kind of overblows and extreme bending and all this weird stuff. And the engineer very helpfully, and also it really upset me, was just like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm sure we can stitch it together from all the bits you've played." I'm just like, "No, I'm going to play it. I'm going to do it right."
Yeah, that happens with guitarists. Sometimes it's not even just the simplicity of the harmonica, it's just the layout of notes. So something that falls on the guitar well, and this is of course true with any instrument, won't fall well on the harmonica. So you're kind of going, what the hell? But it's actually really easy on the guitar, or comparatively easy. And then you're going, look, I've got this stupid little toy instrument. What do you expect me to do?
Yeah, it's a weird one, because you play a lot of different styles on harmonica, and I've struggled to play a lot of different styles, and have just resigned myself to kind of stick to blues and blues associated genres, so R&B, funk, soul, jazz tinged blues. I'm not going to say jazz, because that's a whole other thing. Like, how do you make it work? Because it's not easy.
It's a good question. I think being comfortable with positions and the different strengths that positions give you is a big thing, and that'll include not just first, second, third, but also 12th. Maybe fourth, maybe some others, but 12th is a good one, or first flat, for bright sort of major kind of tunes. If you look at kind of musical theatre stuff and the Great American Songbook and even jazz standards, or at least jazzy. Don't use the jazz word, the J word. But the 12th position often kind of works for that stuff in a way that second or first doesn't as much. But even if you take the first three positions, it's really helpful to understand those and the strengths that they have. And I think that's something that isn't always explored, and maybe it's something you and I and others should do more teaching for, because second is just the default thing. Cross harp is kind of, once you get into blues at least, then you're almost stuck in second position, aren't you? You're kind of like, well, this is the way I play, and you become scared of other positions.
Yeah, so much so that you'll quite often find that when you're playing with a guitarist or a keyboard player or whatever, they probably start knowing what harmonica you should be playing in second position. So they'll start telling you the key, because they're trying to be helpful. So for example, the song is in the key of E, and you ask them what key it is, and say, oh, it's an A, and you'll be feeling a little bit fruity and thinking, oh well, I might do this in third position. You'll grab your D harmonica, you'll grab your G harmonica and go to play in A, and it'll sound really weird because you're not playing in E, which is what they wanted you to play in. But they were being helpful, because harmonica players always play in second position.
Yeah. So obviously we were planning, or you were running the Edinburgh Harmonica Workshop, which sadly isn't going to go ahead this year. But whole topic,
I didn't tell you. It's just not going ahead with you.
Well, you know what? I knew you'd come to your senses at some point. I'm just amazed that you put up with me for as long as you did.
No, I'm kidding. In case anyone is listening, unfortunately, the Edinburgh Harmonica Workshop is cancelled this year. I'm just joshing with Liam.
So, darn you! It was when you turned around on the street in Edinburgh that I knew.
Yep.
I was like, that's it. He's walking away. So because we were going to teach, and I hope we get to do some of this teaching, because I've bloody prepared it all. I hope we get to do some of this teaching because it's really interesting. But jam nights are fascinating in that regard, because it seems to be more and more people kind of they know that second position thing, and you're constantly being told the wrong key, and people are trying to be helpful, and that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, those sort of possible pitfalls when you get to a jam session, and you almost have to be really clear with your questioning with people, and sort of, ask them what key they're playing in on guitar, or ask them concert pitch, or ask them sort of, don't try and tell me what harmonica I need, tell me what key the song is, kind of thing. Like, be really clear with them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and we'll definitely get to do that workshop. I'm hoping next year, unless the pandemic really devolves into something much more serious. Not that it isn't already insanely serious, but I'm hoping that it'll be clear by 2021 and we'll be able to do workshops again. But yeah, it's an interesting one, kind of where a harmonica player fits into a band, because it's such a strange role, especially if you're just a harmonica player and you're not a band leader. I think people expect that you're just going to add a little bit of spice on top, rather than kind of adding something musically valid. And if you go in there with a little bit of musical knowledge, they're kind of surprised and don't really know how to handle it.
When you said add a little bit of spice, you did a little hand wiggle, and I'm imagining that when you play with your band, you kind of do that every time you take a solo now.
Well, yeah,
the little Tomlin wiggle.
Yeah. This is wasted on the audio recording. Oh man. So okay, so a lot of our plans, a lot of your plans have been suddenly scuppered. What are you working on now that you've got extra time? Are you practicing?
I mean, apart from the carpentry.
Apart from the carpentry and the website, I'm assuming there are other plans.
Yeah, I mean, I put more time aside for practice, and I'm hoping that it kind of happens. So this week I've been recording lessons, so I haven't really been practicing. But the next few months, I've got more practicing kind of scheduled in my diary than I have probably ever. I mean, I played a lot when I was younger, but I've never had this kind of organized in my diary kind of this many hours kind of practicing. And it's not a huge amount, but it's more than I have done. I mean, I'm guilty. I think you mentioned a similar thing when you were talking to Will Wilde in your first podcast. That thing of telling your students about regular practice and a little bit every day, yada, yada. And then you can get into a kind of a habit yourself of just being so busy that you don't do it yourself. And then you think, well, I'm going out there and telling people to do this stuff and I'm not doing it myself.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because I know that when I was gigging a lot, because I used to do 4 or 5 nights a week, and I'd be teaching a lot as well. I didn't have time to practice, but I felt that I didn't feel like I was improving, but I felt like I was maintaining fluidity and kind of keeping loose in a good way. And that's something that you get from performing and using your instrument a lot, but I don't think you improve beyond a certain point, unless there are reasons to, unless your band asks you to learn challenging things or whatever. It's quite difficult to make a concerted improvement. Do you find the same?
I think there's different types of improvement, and the time when I was kind of happiest with my playing was when I wasn't gigging a lot. I mean, I was playing out in bars a lot, but I was just sitting in with people. So I had a period of a few years where I was that annoying guy who like waves his harmonica from the back of the room and kind of shuffles his way on stage, semi-uninvited. And I just played with loads of people. And it meant I was playing genres that I didn't really know about, and I was forcing myself outside my comfort zone. And I made loads of mistakes, but I got a really good sense of what to do live, and my live playing and my improvisation and my ear, it was kind of really intense ear training. So I was then able to hear stuff that now I can't hear. I've heard a few recordings of that time, and I've gone, shit, did I play that? I mean, and it's not like out of this world, but I'm like, that was really like just I didn't know the song, and yet I played something tasteful and interesting, and so I wasn't practicing a lot. I was just jamming. So there's that side of it. But then if you want to improve your technique, if you want to understand music better in a theoretical way, and actually bring yourself on in specific ways with specific goals in mind, of course, practice is the way to do that.
Okay, well, we'll talk about this afterwards when we're not recording, and you can tell me the truth. So do you have anything specifically that you're wanting to work on with your practice?
I'm kind of really interested in phrasing at the minute and everything that entails. So the whole motivation behind this was I was thinking recently, well, what is it that's holding my playing back? And there's loads of things, but I kind of decided if I had to pick one thing that was a difference between me and my playing and then my favorite players, it would be phrasing. And there'd be other things, but it would be, they'd come up with unpredictable kind of groupings of notes and positioning of those notes. I haven't actually worked out how to learn any of that stuff yet, but my plan is to work out how to learn that stuff. It's not much of a plan, but that's the plan.
I think this is an interesting topic, that it's a word that gets bandied around a ton by teachers, by players. It's something that you'll hear at a jam session. Someone will point out that guitarist over there has great phrasing, but I don't think it's always very well understood. How do you describe phrasing to your students?
Well, let's see, this is the thing. I haven't really taught much phrasing, in that there's so much other stuff to get. Not I was going to say before, and I don't really mean before, but there's so much other stuff that tends to come up naturally, if that makes sense. That phrasing almost gets left by the by, and that's a failure on my part, I think, and represents my playing as well. But it isn't something that I tend to go down. I mean, there's always so much work getting people to understand what the right notes are or the strong notes are at any given point over any given chord. The phrasing is always this side issue that isn't always kind of tackled head on. What's your approach with your students?
So my approach for phrasing specifically is to it's kind of the same approach for everything, is listen to musicians with great phrasing. Pick people that you enjoy listening to and try and work out, for starters, what the kind of rhythmic phrasing and the timing is of it, because I think interesting note choices, interesting kind of orders of notes, that's a big part of it, but it's also the spacing and the story arc that you're trying to create when you're playing. So if you listen to Miles Davis and you listen to all of Kind of Blue, that's just killer phrasing all the way through. And if you try and replicate without even thinking about what note choices are, you're just trying to replicate the rhythm and the spacing. I think that's a huge part of it to begin with. That's certainly what I would do with students, is get them to try and replicate what they hear from things that aren't necessarily harmonica. So singers are, I think, a great inspiration for great phrasing. Any wind instrument that's not harmonica is great for phrasing. Well, the reason I say that is harmonica has the amazing advantage and disadvantage in that you can play constantly because you can breathe out and breathe in. So where a lot of other instruments might have natural phrases that are dictated to by how long they can play for, because they need to take a breath. We don't have that, and that's something that I'm sure you've noticed in kind of students who are earlier on their improvisational journey, that they get to the end of a phrase where you would stop the phrase and they just hold the note, and then they change air direction and it just keeps going, and then they start another, and there's no punctuation, there's no pauses where there should be.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to confidence. If you're nervous or just inexperienced, then it's very difficult to stop yourself. It's comforting to keep hearing the instrument and to keep breathing and concentrating on that, and not kind of having the time to look around and notice what other people are thinking of your playing, or kind of worry about that space between the notes. So it's partly a mental thing of gaining the confidence to take the thing out of your mouth.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've almost got time to put it in your pocket and take it out again and before the next phrase.
But that could be a cool exercise. Is you have to maybe not put it in your pocket because of lint and stuff, but you have to physically put the instrument down in between phrases, and that will build a natural pause in. Because I think if you listen to singers, generally I find, especially in blues music, they sing only 50% of the time during a verse, and there's about 50% gap. And if you think about not playing for as much as that, it's kind of scary, but I think it's a very musical approach. And then you can always fill it in, but it's easier to add things as you progress through a solo rather than taking them away. I think it's really easy to just go in full speed and do too much.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing as loud as you can play and as busy as you can play at the start of the solo, there's nowhere to go. So there's you can't build an arc. You can only stay there or go down. It's a tricky position to find yourself in.
So yeah, I think phrasing's a great thing for anyone to practice, but I do think you're selling yourself massively short. I think of all the players that I listen to, you're someone who has excellent phrasing. And it's, I feel that you think very musically. You don't necessarily think, I want to be a harmonica hero, even though you are a harmonica hero. You think about servicing the song and creating something very musical. You use a lot of dynamics in your solos, and you build the solos. I know that I find it exciting and intimidating whenever we play together. So
that's why you turn around when you see me in the street.
Yep.
Oh no, he's brought his harmonica.
He's going to expect me to play.
I think dynamics is another thing. So I love using dynamics, and there's most people, especially when they're relatively inexperienced on the harmonica, they're not aware of the huge dynamic range the harmonica can have. And it's the same with any instrument, but with harmonica, it's rarely tapped into, especially the quieter side of it, because when you start playing with bands, you're then competing with the other instruments. So most of the time you just spend smashing the notes out as hard as you can in the hope that you'll be heard. Mm-hmm. And actually, if the setup of the band and the amplification is correct, you should be able to play very gentle notes and still be heard, just like with an electric guitar. You don't always have to kind of smash out every single note. And it's one of the things that overnight, I think so many players could improve their playing if they just practiced bringing the volume down and then back up and down and playing with the kind of those changes in volume without even changing a single note in their playing. It would make everything they played more interesting.
Oh, definitely. And well, we've spoken about this before, and you've actually recorded a course for Tomlin Harmonica School all about dynamics, and I think it is such an overlooked subject. And it's kind of a consistent thing when I give feedback to students of, generally they're playing at the higher end of the dynamic range of the instrument already all the time. So they're playing at 101% all the time. and you're kind of my first thing is play a little bit softer, and they play again, and it's exactly the same volume, and it's kind of like how do you get someone to realize that just that tiniest amount of airflow can provide something that's really interesting to hear, and you've got that whole range, but it's really difficult to convince people. And I've done some really cruel things in the past with students where I've hooked them up to an amp, and I've given them a microphone, and I've set the amp so that it's unbearably loud and they're right next to it, and they have to play quietly, otherwise it's really painful.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. Skype has been interesting, teaching over Skype. Sometimes I've used the kind of practice exercise of, play a bit softer, and we'll keep going, to the point where I'll kind of say to them, I don't want to hear the note, because over Skype, you should be able to play a note that's so quiet that the person at the other end shouldn't hear it. And getting them down, I can't usually get them down to that quiet, but usually I can, reduce their volume 50% or something, which is some sort of victory, I think.
Definitely. And I think that's what a lot of students don't realize when they listen to these amazing recordings of amplified harmonica, and it cuts through and it's been mixed so beautifully, and they think, wow, they must be playing so hard. It's like, no, that's why they're using a microphone. And that's why they've got great cupping technique, and that's how it cuts through. It's not because they're playing super hard. I mean, there is nothing worse than what you described earlier, of being on stage and not being able to hear yourself, and not being certain that anyone else can hear yourself. So you play really hard, and you know that if anything is coming through, it's not the nicest sound that you can make, because everything's going to be overdriving too much, and it'll be too big, not in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, David Barrett's a great example of that soft playing. And I remember when you had him over for the festival, and I'd seen his stuff online, and it's one thing to hear someone on a YouTube video and they're kind of playing at home, and it's easy to play quieter if you're just in a room on your own. But then he got up with the band, and he was so laid back, he was almost horizontal, and his playing was like exactly as relaxed as he is at home, I imagine. And I'm not, stalking him looking through the window. And I thought that was a great lesson to the students and to us. Well, to me, certainly, I was kind of thinking, to be that relaxed, it was amazing.
Oh, dude, it was definitely a lesson for me as well. It was quite funny though, because I offered him the choice between a little valve amp and a really big loud valve amp, and I just assumed he'd go for the little understated one. He's like, no, I want the big one. so he's very chill and laid back, because he's got an amp that's going to push it out, which I think is something to bear in mind as well, because you don't want to play loud through a loud amp.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of people are battling a band that's too loud, and they've got an amp that's too small, or they haven't got an amp, or they haven't got a monitor, so they don't know if they're being heard. So a lot of the time it isn't people's fault. It's the situation and the kind of setup with the band.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to learn. And that's kind of what I'm so disappointed about not doing this workshop this year, because that's really what I wanted to get people comfortable with is being on stage, how to hear yourself, understanding what a monitor is, understanding where to stand in relation to your amp, and all of that stuff. It's really difficult to practice at home. There's no kind of substitute for doing hundreds and hundreds of pub gigs, basically.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's what you've done, that's what I've done, and I am almost certain, unless you are the luckiest person on the planet, that you very rarely get the ideal monitoring situation.
Yeah, being at home, it's kind of it's like my ears are coming back and working again, and I've also realised that you can go to bed before midnight, which is an interesting thing. So these pub gigs, you're lucky if you come home without your ears ringing a lot of the time, and monitor wise, a lot of the time you haven't even got one, and it's certainly something. It's difficult. There are ways of teaching it online, but there's definitely value to having everyone in a room together and with a band and with the equipment there and trying it out. Touching the microphone, passing it to someone else, handing on a virus, that sort of thing. So I hope when things have changed, when the world is touch wood back to normal or some form of normal, we can get back to teaching people that stuff.
Yeah, we might have to wipe down the microphones in between. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. I don't know. If we all get relaxed back into our normal lives, we might forget about all this. Who talks about SARS these days?
That's true, but SARS didn't make it as far as us, really, did it?
It's really, I mean, obviously it's unprecedented, and I think people in the US are experiencing similar things to have this kind of lockdown thing going on. We went for a walk to town, me and my good lady wife, the other day. I like her more than my hairy man wife.
Is that me?
Yeah. We just took a stroll into town, and some police officers walked past us, and I kind of almost felt guilty for a minute, like, oh, are we doing something wrong? We were just taking our allowed kind of daily walk, but it's a strange atmosphere, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. I'm finding it very pleasant at home. I'm connecting with a lot of people that I haven't done so in a while. I'm doing these podcasts. I already work from home anyway, so it's not been a huge culture shock to me. But I've been feeling good at home. I've been practicing. I've started practicing chess just for a little bit of light relief.
Chess records.
Yeah, chess records. Chess the game. But as soon as I go outside, I just feel like I'm just under attack, and it's just I've got to go out and come back in as quickly as possible. It's not comfortable at all.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange feeling to have. Have you kind of changed? I mean, would you go out a lot more than you are currently going out then? Or because obviously you work from home most of the time anyway.
So because I work from home, I usually go out for a couple of hours walk most days, or I'll go swimming, and I meet people for coffee 3 times a week probably. So I'm aware of the dangers of being stuck at home all the time. So I make a concerted effort to do things outside. So I am missing that. It's a bit weird.
Do you still get to go and check on the minions you've got working in the cellar, locked up, doing all your work? Is that allowed?
No, we're all quarantined. Well, no, I mean, so Leanne, who keeps a lot of the harmonica school running in the back end of it. She's based in the Philippines, and she's also in lockdown. But we talk all the time online, and yeah, it's sounding like they're okay out there. She's in a good position where she is. I think it might be different if she was in Manila, kind of big city. And I've got one of my minions, the video editor Fergus. He's in the same city as me, and I'd probably see him 2 or 3 times a week. And now I don't, which is it's kind of sad because I enjoy working with him. I think he enjoys working with me as well. I certainly know that it's a lot easier if I'm there to answer questions about stuff. But he's working from home. He'll be editing this podcast because he's also a good audio person, not just video. So
what's the Tomlin Leckie plan then? Now you've cornered the harmonica teaching online thing. It's going to be that the burgeoning market of harmonica podcasts you're going to take by storm next.
Oh man, I don't think I've cornered the market of harmonica teaching. I just right now, this sounds super cheesy. I'm really enjoying how much positive community stuff is happening in the harmonica world. And I want to support and promote that. So that's why I'm getting everyone on to do the podcast. And I also really want to be able to get people doing more things on Tomlin Harmonica School. Because I started learning harmonica by myself at home, and learned from Adam Gussow on YouTube. And then I wasn't really sure what else to do. And it's taken a while to discover everyone that I have discovered. And I like the idea of trying to bring all those people together on my site and through the podcast and YouTube and whatnot. So it's kind of my plans are just what they've always been, really.
I think that obviously the current situation is dire and there's terrible stuff happening, but and I think it'll bring out the worst in some people, but it's definitely bringing out the best in a lot of people as well. And although we're physically isolated, there's a lot of connection going on, aided by technology, obviously, but people wanting to connect and remembering the importance of connection, and it is going to lead, I think, a bit like wartime always does, to advancements and new ideas and all sorts of new stuff going on. I mean, I know I've been sitting at home thinking, what am I going to do? So I'm doing more interviews via Skype and Zoom and that, obviously. I'm interviewing Buddy Green after this podcast, actually.
Oh, cool.
So we're having a little chat and got some others lined up. And I'm doing a kids course because my niece, my sister-in-law asked about my niece, giving her daughter some music lessons. And I said, well, people are always asking for kids lessons. So I'm going to do a YouTube series of just basic stuff for kids, which I would never usually get time for, but I just thought, well, why not? And I'll dedicate it to my little niece, Lizzie, and that'll be nice. And I'm doing this World Harmonica Jam where people can send in their submissions to play a song, and I'll stitch them all together and turn it into a kind of a collaboration and all this stuff. So it's kind of exciting times as well as being scary times.
Yeah, I think well, all the stuff you're doing is really, really cool. I'm super excited to see what this worldwide jam is going to look like. I'm going to try and get my submission in before, is it the 6th of April?
It's Monday, the 6th of April.
So this podcast is going to go out after that. So what I'll do is I'll link up the final video with everyone playing. Yeah. Wait, when are you planning on publishing that?
Well, I mean, it'll be the week beginning the 6th of April. At some point I will get around to editing it. I think there's going to be lots of fiddly editing to do, making it work. But I'm not expecting it to be technologically perfect. But the important thing for me is, again, that community aspect. I just want people to get a chance to feel a connection, and it's exciting for me. I've had a lot of submissions in already, and I'm sitting there and people are watching these submissions as they come in, and people are playing different versions of the song, improvised, kind of in their own way, different positions and stuff, and it's really nice seeing this stuff come in from all around the world. And so it's more about the connection than, I mean, we're not going to submit it and try and get it in the charts or anything.
You never know. It could be the kind of thing that gets picked up and people will be like, wow, harmonica's super cool. And we'll be like, yeah, we know. We've been trying to tell you this for years.
Yeah. We knew this all along. I thought I might, if it goes well and if it works, I might make a series of it. I mean, I just kind of, for the first one I picked Bobby McFerrin, Don't Worry, Be Happy, just because I love the tune and I thought it'd be a nice positive one. But there's loads of tunes it would work with. And so, if it doesn't take me too long to edit and if people enjoy it, I might do some more in the future.
Nice. Well, it's funny because when the day that you announced it, when you put out the video explaining what to do, I had just asked Harry, the guitarist I work with, to record a 24-bar loop to then do a harmonica jam with all of the harmonica teachers that I know. So there's going to be another jam happening. It's weird. I think you and I always seem to be on a similar wavelength, because we put out the same lesson on the same day a couple of times, haven't we?
And I think we also we like moved house on the same day, and there's been a few strange things. There's also been a few rumors going around that we're actually the same person. So I think that might be true.
Yeah, well, I get called Liam all the time. I don't know if you get called Tomlin, but
I get called all sorts of things.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just something about the British harmonica contingent, that everyone else around the world is just like, they're all Liam.
Maybe we're the two most annoying people on YouTube, and so we get confused.
Yeah.
Like, which annoying British guy is that? Oh, I don't know, one of them.
They all sound the same.
Yeah.
And now we're both on the same podcast, and they're just thinking, maybe that's just Tomlin talking to himself.
You might have to release the video for this one just to clarify who's saying what.
No, it's fine. We'll let the audience decide. Oh man. So what's the kind of longer term stuff that you're working on? Because I know that you recently launched your own online harmonica school. How's that going?
Yeah, it's going well. So it's motivated me. The kind of opening of the online school has motivated me to work on some more kind of courses that have a clear pathway of development from start to finish, which is stuff I haven't really done online before, but it makes sense with the online membership model. And actually today, just before we started recording this podcast, I released my first course in that kind of mold. So I've released an absolute beginner course, again doing something that you've just done yourself, so proving again that we keep doing the same thing. So I've released the first month of what's going to be a year-long complete beginners course. So the first month is absolute basics, holding the harmonica, playing a few notes, and playing your first song. So that's just gone out today, and I really
what is
enjoyed
the first song?
it.
Can I just interject? Have you stolen my first song?
I don't know what your first song is, so I hope not. No, I did. Oh, what did I do? I did I did hot cross buns.
Okay, that's okay. That's
I very
okay.
much stoutly taught hot cross buns.
I did not.
So the great thing with hot cross buns is it's a really good practice for basically moving around the major scale in the middle of the harp, but then it also has a little 3-blow, so it's kind of got a little dip down to that lower note in it, and it just seemed like the perfect one to start with. Terrible little nursery rhyme, but And I think the line goes, "If you have no daughters, give them to your sons." I didn't even know that was the words, which is an awful line. Like, your poor son's sitting around, daughters are getting all the hot cross buns.
Yeah, that's so weird. Well, I will link up your absolute beginner course in the show notes. So that's on learntheharmonica.com, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Very cool. And after you've done the year-long course, are you going to carry on with more advanced stuff, or are you going to do kind of more specific courses on kind of specific areas?
Maybe a bit of both. I mean, I was thinking last night about a kind of intermediate toolbox kind of course, key skills that intermediates want to know. I'm giving you all my trade secrets now. At least we've got this recorded so I can prove that you stole my idea.
What was that intermediate toolbox? That's gold.
So, those two, I'm gonna go and copyright those two words.
Already done it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, other courses that kind of that help people focus, and I know that that's what people want, and I haven't really had the time in the past to do it, but I've actually found doing the beginner one, I've planned the whole year ahead now, and actually, because it forced me to be more efficient, in my planning, just the way I had to record it and the kind of the map that I had to set myself for the whole course, it sort of ended up taking less time than my usual kind of a bit here, a bit there approach. So I'll hopefully do some more and see how we get on. But I'm hoping I'm going to be back to gigging soon, so I won't have as much time. I'm going to see how things get on. I mean, if it hadn't been for coronavirus, I should have done, I don't know, maybe 100 and something gigs this year, which it's not like I'm out every night, but it's enough that, you know, when you're having late nights and stuff, you're not going to be doing your website stuff every day. And I'm hoping to get back to that if we haven't entered a post-gig economy. I don't know. So yeah, we'll see, because I've got like loads of recordings on the back burner and stuff, so that there's loads of other stuff, the gigging side of things, that's waiting to be unleashed as well.
Oh, that's cool. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your various projects, because you have a lot of different musical outlets?
Yeah, so I mean, there's the Liam Ward band, which is my kind of baby, and that is all original rhythm and blues stuff, and that I kind of pump my own. I put almost all of my creative energy into that. It's really sort of, it's my thing. And then I do a few other projects. I play with the Jake Leg Jug Band doing 1920s stuff. And yes, we struggle to pronounce it as much as everyone else who announces on us on stage. So it's the Jake Leg Jug Band, and we get all kinds of, next up is the Jimmy Band. So that's my other main thing. And we've just released an album of songs written about the Prohibition era, because in January it was 100 years since the US Prohibition began. So we've just released an album called Goodbye Booze, which seems fitting because no one can go down the shops and buy alcohol anymore or go to the pub. So, you know, nice. We timed that right.
Well, I will link that up.
Yeah, and then I've got a few other duos and stuff. I'll send you some links to put. I love playing duo stuff. It's such a kind of, I mean, it feels so free. If you're just playing with a guitarist, there's so much room and it's not constrained by anything. I don't know how. What's your favorite way to play in terms of a band setup?
Okay, I will answer that momentarily, but I want to really quickly ask you about duo stuff, because I love playing in a guitar harmonica duo. The only thing that I've struggled with is finding a guitarist who can put up with a harmonica player. How do you deal with that? Or do you have that problem?
So no, I never have that. So you said earlier something like, where's a harmonica player's place in the band? And sadly, the answer is often there is no space for the harmonica in the band. And it's difficult, I think, even in a band setting, to find a guitarist who understands what the harmonica, what its strengths are. I mean, of course, there are people out there these days who do all sorts of amazing things on the harmonica, playing it chromatically, and diatonic harmonicas, playing them chromatically, and fitting them into all styles of music. But there are basic things that the harmonica's good at, and it's hard sometimes to get people to understand that without becoming a complete virtuoso, you're going to need a helping hand from them, or they're going to need to allow you a certain kind of space, a certain sonic space in the band, and they're going to have to allow a certain amount of simplicity, maybe in terms of chord structure, but also just in terms of the layering of the sound of the band, and again the volume and the dynamics of the band. I find that I've met a lot of musicians, and if you talk to enough of them, you're going to find some that get it. You're either going to get like an old blues guy who's played with enough harp players that he kind of gets what a harmonica will do, and so will respect that. Or sometimes you find the younger people are great. I often play with guitarists who are younger than me. Now I'm an old man, and they often younger people are just more open, so they'll listen and they'll try new things, and it doesn't necessarily always lead to a traditional way of playing, but they might kind of listen, especially if you're older than them, then they think of you as the old man, so you can just tell them what to do.
Okay, for anyone who hasn't seen Liam is a very sprightly 30-year-old. Is it now?
I'm 31.
31. Oh, you're over 30, but that is not an old man, and I'm holding on to that because I'm a little bit north of that. So
You just hit 70, didn't you?
yeah.
You're looking good for it, to be fair.
Yeah, for 70, for 33, not so great. But yeah, you asked me about ideal band setup, and I think it for me it's changed, and it will continue to change. So I used to play in a 6-piece band, and that was a real challenge, but it was also really exciting. It was a challenge because if you have 6 instruments in a band, then it's really difficult to find your space. And harmonica can occupy a lot of space, and it can also occupy very little space, but it's knowing how to slot yourself in to 2 guitars, keyboard, bass, drums. It's quite full on. So that was fun because you had all of this support, so you could be a little bit more spicy with your playing rather than having to fill out the sound. But then after that, I went to playing with a 2-piece, as a 2-piece, just guitar and harmonica, and that's so amazingly liberating from a harmonica player's point of view, because you can do everything that harmonica can do in that context. So you can be a kind of rhythm, bassline, comping kind of player, or you can be very sweet and melodic, and there's room for it because the guitar complements you as a harmony instrument. The issue that I found with guitarists is it's difficult to find a guitarist who is musically good enough to keep up, but also doesn't mind not taking a lot of solos, because it's very difficult for a harmonica player to provide enough accompaniment for a guitarist to take a solo without it feeling like the bottom end has completely dropped out of the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of got lucky I've played with a few guitarists. Matt Jones, who was in the Liam Ward band for the first album, it was hard to get him to take a solo sometimes. He was a fabulous guitarist, but he wasn't bothered about getting the limelight. And Malcolm Thorne, who I'm playing with in a duo at the moment, he's the same. It's kind of like I'd like him to take a solo maybe once a night, just because the guitarists need to hear a guitar solo, and then I'll play something rhythmic underneath. But he'll do it, but he's not bothered, So maybe I've got lucky, but I've also met a lot of guitarists who could never do duo stuff because their rhythm playing isn't good enough, or they just don't get that they are the rhythm, or they have to be the rhythm for the bulk of the time, So it's difficult. The harmonica is a strange instrument, and not everyone understands it in terms of other instruments. I mean, it's kind of nice for you because you started out as a guitarist, right? So you kind of you see both sides.
I do, and it was actually kind of a revelation recently for me, where I spent a lot of time trying to play everything I could play on guitar on harmonica, and that is a losing battle just because they're so different in terms of the note layout and what their strengths are, and it basically meant that my harmonica playing, if I did try and do guitar stuff on it, didn't sound great. And my guitar playing was kind of falling by the wayside. And it's been a revelation of late that I can just focus on what the harmonica is really good at, and kind of focus on that, or what I find easy on the harmonica. There are players who can do anything on it, as you said, but what I find easy is the kind of the ornamentation within the context of a band, rather than being the solid rhythm that kind of keeps everything together. And when I want to be that solid rhythmic player, then I put my guitar on. And so that's been quite liberating, to realize that each instrument has its strengths and I can play each instrument separately.
You know, if you're listening to some music you enjoy, in your head, are you playing guitar or are you playing harmonica along to the music?
Joe, it depends. What's actually quite strange is that I don't listen to a lot of music that features either guitar or harmonica. So I tend to listen to a lot of electronic and dance music. So a lot of kind of heavily produced stuff, specifically because I don't know how to make it. So I can just enjoy it as music. Whereas if I'm listening to guitar or harmonica or music where those instruments slot in, I find it difficult to switch off the teacher / student brain of, oh, I wonder how I'd fit in here, and I wonder how I would explain to someone how to do it, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I certainly don't play guitar in my head because I can't play guitar in real life.
But do in my dreams, I'm a guitarist. No, but I mean, what do you can you switch off when you're listening to music?
I struggle. I mean, I don't listen to a lot of harp unless I'm specifically wanting to turn on the student side of my brain. Mm-hmm. So I will set aside time to listen to stuff, or I'll say, you know, on the way to a gig, I'll decide to listen to a certain person, usually Kim Wilson, you know, for inspiration. And I know that the whole time I'm listening, I'm going to be a student. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't really listen at home. And one of the saddest things is that I grew up listening to Bob Dylan and Neil Young, and, you know, especially Dylan. I just can't listen to him anymore. And, you know, he's kind of a poet and a genius and all that stuff that we all know. But playing the harmonica has ruined his music for me. I can't sit and listen to it.
That's funny. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything Dylan related.
You know, and this is coming from a guy who's got Bob Dylan tunes, you know, lessons on YouTube. Like, I taught stuff. But that's the thing. It got me into harmonica, and it's got millions of people into the instrument, and maybe more than anyone else in Western music. You know, he's kind of got people into playing diatonic harmonica, and, you know, that's something. But it's a shame that, you know, the solo comes, I'm enjoying the song, and then the solo comes in and I'm like, you know.
See, I get that, but then do you not think that it's the perfect solo for that song?
Yeah, in a way, but I mean, sometimes it's still a bit piercing, you know. I it's not that I'm going, oh, his technique's bad, but it's just sort of, partly it's just that I've become so used to trying to finesse my playing, you know, that anything rough around the edges is deemed bad. So yeah, you're right. It kind of does suit the music, but I'm like you know, I don't. If I'm listening just to music at home for the joy of listening, I won't listen to harmonica stuff, even if it's great stuff. You know, the better it is, the worse the problem is, because you're then like, oh, I want to know how to do it, you know, and then you're stopping and rewinding it and getting your harps out of the case and all that. Yeah,
no, it's definitely a harmonica-free zone in the kind of relaxing at home stage. As much as anything else, I mean, Joe, my wife, has to listen to me playing harmonica every day. And if, when we were sitting listening to music, I also said, oh, we're going to listen to some William Clark now, she would kill me.
Check out that 4-draw bend.
But you know, I will kind of walk down the street listening to William Clark and just be completely blown away. But all I want to do is rush home and work out what he's doing. It's really difficult to just enjoy it. I think some of that goes away a little bit when you're listening to harmonica players live. certainly I know that when we've done the harmonica workshop together, I've always loved all the guest teachers and watching their sets, apart from yours.
I find it painful, so I'm not surprised you do.
No, I mean, I love your playing. You know I do. It's the only reason that I can get away with sounding like such an arse when I talk about you.
There were a couple of things that I've seen through your social media recently that I've been thinking about. So one of them was the first podcast you did with Will Wilde, and he was kind of saying how you can easily split harmonica players generally into, a few schools of where, if they sound like Little Walter or William Clark or George Smith or, kind of there's a few like big names. And obviously Will Wilde has carved his own path and doing his own thing and doing an amazing thing. And I was kind of interested listening to that because I agree with him, and yet at the same time, I've actually sort of learned to love that thing of trying to, like, the classic sound is so good that I'm enjoying the quest of trying to do that or do a version of it. Not be Little Walter, but like, it's so good. Why would I try and do something vastly different? And Will Wilde is doing something vastly different and doing it really, really well. I don't think I could do that. So maybe it's just because I'm shit, But it's kind of like I think there is value in trying to do and not reinvent the wheel. But I think there is still value in that. I mean, I try. The thing I can't do is reproduce the lyrics. I'm not interested in the lyrics because they're stories of different people's lives. So I feel I should tell my own story lyrically, but melodically and harmonically, and rhythmically and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, you know what? If I get anywhere near one of those classic, those kind of legends, I'm happy. What's your kind of take on that?
So it's a weird one for me because I didn't want to be a harmonica player. I wanted to be a guitarist.
Nobody does.
No, but like I was totally in love with guitar, and everything that I did was to become a guitarist. And then I got tendonitis in both my wrists, and I had to stop playing for 18 months. And so, I still wanted to play music, so I started playing harmonica. And I really enjoyed harmonica, but I still wanted to play all the guitar stuff on harmonica, which I think is a little bit similar to how Will thinks about harmonica. And it was fun, but it was always kind of lacking. And for me, my technique never got to the stage where I could play it fully chromatically as I wanted to. I couldn't do all the stuff that I would easily play on guitar just because of how the notes are laid out on guitar, not because I was ever an amazing guitarist, but just because, chromaticisms are dead easy on guitar. It's just the way the instrument's built, whereas chromaticisms are not dead easy on a harmonica. And so for a really long time, I worked on the guitarist playing harmonica and trying to play guitar lines on harmonica. And I think that did good things for my playing, but it was very confusing for me as to how I slotted into a band. And I think it was quite confusing when people listened to me, because like, oh, look, he's shredding on harmonica. That's weird. And then I started seeing people like you, and I started seeing people like David Barrett and seeing them live. And I was like, wow, there's this thing that harmonica does that other instruments don't do, which is texture. And there's such a sweet texture. Well, there are so many sweet textures on the instrument that make it what it is. And a lot of that is all the really kind of classic sounds that you can get, going through a bullet mic into a small valve amp and doing a lot of the classic tongue block techniques. So I've kind of come full circle from being very anti-classic harmonica to being completely in love with it, but still with a little bit of that that kind of voice in the back of my head is like, well, you can still hit those notes that you're not supposed to. That's cool. So you should do that. But also stay true to a little bit of the heritage of the instrument. And that was quite a revelation, because like I was one of those people that would play minor in second position between holes 6 and 9, and I wouldn't think about switching to a major pentatonic up there because the notes lay out really easily. And then when I started noticing that's what people did and playing with that sound, I was like, that's really cool. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I'm sure I'll change a few times more in my musical path as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's an interesting sort of area to get into, this idea of, you then hear, oh, well, actually they're playing that more kind of major sound up there, and you get used to that sound, and then it starts to sound not like the only thing you can do, but it sounds okay, and it sounds right, and it sort of sounds fitting, and it doesn't sound strange anymore that they're putting in the whatever, the flat third and the flat 5 in the bottom octave, but they're not doing it up in the top octave. You just get used to that, and I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but it's very difficult to divorce your kind of hearing of the instrument from its history and from its legacy. And I think that can actually be a good thing. It means, well, then you become part of the next step of that instrument, and you're not leaving behind the way it was. You're not necessarily just a heritage kind of artist trying to do exactly that, but you're respecting it in some way. There was something else I saw on your social media. You put out a little video of Lee Sankey answering a question in one of your, I think it was a live Q&A or something, and he was asked about a video on YouTube of him playing a solo, and how did he form that solo. And I was just reminded of his answer when you were talking about seeing people play live, because he mentioned how what you do at home and then what you're doing on stage are very different. They're different headspaces. You're using different parts of your brain, and everything is different. You've still got the same instrument, and you've still got the same abilities, but the situation is so different that you can't kind of sort of equate the two. And that's been something that's just been kind of going around in my head since, because I think that's something that, again, if we get to teach some jam stuff in the future, it'll be useful to kind of discuss, because if people are sitting out there thinking, how come I can't do that when I get out of the jam? It's not just that you forget it or you're nervous. It's actually, a performance is a very different thing. It's actually kind of constituted of completely different things than a practice session, and that's kind of an important thing to get your head around. I don't know about you, but when I see people play live, I'm not, and you kind of alluded to this, so maybe there'll be overlap for you. I'm not necessarily listening to them as much as I'm still processing and analyzing, but I'm analyzing a performance, not a piece of music,
Yeah, that's a really solid point. There's such a big difference between great musicianship and great performance, and sometimes they overlap, and that's great. But I think when you're watching, I'm sure you've had this experience a bunch of times when you've heard recordings of a band and they've been okay, but then you see them live and you're just like, oh, this is nuts. Like these guys are incredible. And it's because the performance brings so much to it. And that's something, it's kind of strange, because like I love being on stage and I love performing, and I think that's something that always takes people by surprise if they've only seen me doing YouTube lessons and then they see me on stage for the first time and they're like, who is that guy? Why does he have an American accent? But it's because to me, being on stage is acting, and I love doing that, and I almost kind of come out of myself. I come out of the musician side, and it's less stressful. in a lot of ways. Whereas when I'm practicing, I'm so judgmental of my own playing, and every little thing really upsets me. Whereas I can kind of let go a little bit more on stage, unless it's playing in front of Liam Ward or David Barrett or Ronnie Shellist. And then you have that moment of, shit, there's Ronnie Shellist out there listening to me. Can he not just go outside for a moment?
It's interesting because when I hear you play, every note annoys and offends me as well. No, I love your playing.
Oh, buddy, that stings.
Ooh, burn.
Well, this is going to feel very unnatural, but this feels like quite a natural point to wrap things up. But I don't want to wrap things up just yet. I would like you to tell us what you want to promote, what people should be checking out. I'm going to be putting your new Absolute Beginner course in the show notes, but what else should people be checking out?
So the main thing to check out at the minute is my YouTube channel. So if you can put a link to the Learn the Harmonica YouTube channel, I'm planning over the next 2 months to be pretty active, because I've got nothing better to do. I've done all my carpentry for the moment, and I've got all these ideas. So I'm going to do a lot of beginner stuff coming up. So the beginners out there, keep an eye out. But I'll also be keeping up with my usual song studies and blues stuff and all that stuff I'm passionate about.
Nice. And also we need to push it to 100,000.
Yes, that's true. At some point in the next 10 years.
I don't know. I think it's going to be within the next couple of months. I mean, not that I keep an eye on what everyone's subs are, because that would be madness.
Not that you're emailing people saying, please don't subscribe to Liam's YouTube channel.
Subscribe to mine instead.
You know, there's when I upload a video to YouTube, there's always one person who dislikes it in like the first 10 views.
That's me.
And I really wish you'd stop.
Oh man, I have exactly the same, and it's so bizarre because I understand that people don't like the videos, but it's how quick it is. It's kind of as soon as it's up online, someone dislikes it. It feels personal.
I'd like to put out an appeal right now to whoever is disliking our videos to say, just feel the love, and think of us at home watching the likes going up, and how painful it is to see that little dislike right at the start.
Or just don't watch the video.
You must get the same as me. I mean, I get all these emails, dear Tomlin, will you do this lesson, please? And I obviously reply saying, I'm not Tomlin, but no, I won't do the lesson. No, I get a lot of requests, and you can't do them all, and sometimes they're like obscure things that you think, well, they're literally the only person who'll watch it. But I try to do as many as possible. But I wonder if there's someone out there who I've never done the song they wanted. So every video that isn't that song, they're just clicking.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Down.
Well, maybe if that person's listening, can you send Liam an email and tell him what song you want doing? And I'm sure he will acquiesce to that request so that you start liking. Well, thank you so much for a lovely, lovely time. Thank you for joining me. And I hope that everyone checks out learntheharmonica.com and everything else that we've mentioned in the show notes. Liam is a fabulous teacher, which is why I love working with him so much, and a fabulous player. So you need to check out all of his stuff. And I'll see you very soon. Take it easy.
Am I saying goodbye?
Yes.
I didn't know if you were speaking to me or speaking to
and you're saying
audience.
Goodbye like that. I'm going to... Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tomlin's Harmonica Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Join me next Monday for the next episode. Happy harping!